You're gonna...
I was 22 years old when I came to prison.
I was 30 years old when I went to prison.
I was at the age of 19. I had just turned 19.
Hi, I'm Chris, and I help life-sentenced men transition from institutionalized prison life back into society. Every one of our men has already served 25 to 45 years in prison. I serve on the board of the Corrections Transition Program at Everglades Correctional Institution in Miami, Florida. I teach these men life skills and how to speak, listen, and think, so when they get parole, they become assets to their communities rather than liabilities of the state. Welcome to Men Going Home. I'm Chris Wolfe, and we've got another great show for you today because we are the only show that brings you access to a segment of society very few people know anything about. Men who have spent more than 30, 35, and even 40 years in prison. We'll talk to them about their crimes, their life in prison, and what their transition back into the free world was like after all those years. Now, before we welcome today's special guest, please welcome my good friend and co-host of this show, Andy Korge. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here. Another great show, another great guest. And, I was thinking a little bit about our guest of last week.
Jose Nerey.
Mm-hmm. And he was a real interesting subject. And a couple takeaways from that show. And I urge anyone watching today to go back and look at that show. You can see it at the True Crime channel on YouTube. All our shows are situated there. But the interesting thing that came about, and it kind of touched me, I could relate to it, was his acceptance by his peers, the peer pressure that almost caused the crime to occur. You know, he had a young girl that he was trying to impress. He was with her brothers and her brother's friend. They wanted to commit a robbery that he didn't really want to commit, but he wanted to get acceptance from her and get her to like him. And it was the peer pressure that sort of threw him into that situation. So I could relate to that because all kids can at a young age. You know, you get pressure from your peers, from your friends. You want to be liked. And that was one of the real big takeaways I took from that show last week.
I've interviewed a number of men in our program that were adolescents when they came to prison. And peer pressure is one of the common denominators that caused a lot of them to come to prison. A lot of them say that they hung around the wrong group of people growing up. They succumbed to peer pressure, they used alcohol and drugs, and they just flat out made bad choices and bad decisions. And that was just an amazing example of how peer pressure, he wanted to impress this girl's brother so he could get in with the girl, and it caused him to commit a capital crime and spend almost 30 years in prison.
30 years in prison. And the other takeaway, which I couldn't relate to at all, but it was really gratifying to hear him say that he took such a positive outlook towards the time he spent in prison.
Correct.
He looked at it as an opportunity for reformation, to reform his life.
Right. He said so many of us view prison as a place of punishment, but it's a place of reformation and an opportunity to change your life. And he absolutely has changed his life. He's a success story.
Yeah. And so, it was a great interview. You can watch it at True Crime Miami on social media, or of course on the True Crime Network on YouTube.
All right. Well said. Well said. Let's get this show on the road and introduce today's guest, Mr. Kenneth Hodge. Kenneth spent over 40 years in prison after he was convicted of manslaughter at the age of 16. He was paroled in 2016, and he's here to tell his story. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Ken Hodge. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chris. How you doing?
Very good, very good.
And
you found your way here okay from Hollywood?
yeah, I found my way. I found a lot of traffic also. I mean, Miami wasn't like this when I was last. I was young.
Yeah.
It's found a lot of traffic.
A question, Kenneth. You were born in St. Petersburg, Florida, raised in the Overtown neighborhood of Miami in the 60s. What was Overtown like living in the 1960s?
It was a lot of love. That thing I can tell you it was fun being a kid. When I think about my childhood, all I can think about was love and guidance and always having someone I could turn to. Overtime was just different than it was now. At one time, at overtime, you could walk down the street and you might run into Sammy Davis Jr.
Right.
or James Brown or Ella Fitzgerald. You know, Miami was a really great city.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Douglas Elementary, Village Sweetley. I went to Madison, Brownsville, and I went to Miami Central.
And unfortunately, your mother passed away when you were very young. Talk about
I
that.
was 14 years old. I was doing really, really well in school. My mom passed, and I couldn't process that. In my mind, a person go to the hospital to get well. So I didn't realize that my mom had cancer. You know, I had fell out with my father about that for a long time because he didn't share that with me. But I kind of understand now as I got older, I was beginning to understand he was just probably protecting us kids the best way he knew how.
Now, this was your stepfather.
My stepfather.
And he raised you after your mother passed away.
Yes, he did. He did.
But you told me you were a difficult child, and after the age of 14, 15, you said nobody could tell you anything.
I was angry, and I didn't know how to process that anger. I just turned into myself and started being things that I knew were wrong, but it felt so good being like that.
Right.
You know, and I just went with my feelings instead of what I knew was right and what I knew was wrong.
Now, you went to Miami Central High School, correct?
Yes, it
Did you graduate?
No, I didn't.
How old were you when you dropped out?
I was 16.
16. And what did you do?
I went to Job Corps. I wanted to leave the state, see some of the world. I went to Job Corps. I wanted to, and before my mom passed, I told her I was going to be an electronic engineer.
But wait a minute, back up. Most of us don't know what Job Corps is or was. What was Job Corps?
It was a federal program that you can go to learn how to learn trades and get an education.
Where was it?
I went to Texas, San Marcos, Texas. But you had them all over. You had them all over the United States. Even I think you might remember George Foreman.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a boxer. He was boxing up out of Job Corps. He came out of Job Corps as a boxer.
And he was from Texas, and that's where your Job Corps program was?
Right. That's where my Job Corps program was, San Marcos, Texas.
So you were living in Texas, and then you'd come back to Miami how often?
Well, maybe about 30 days, 60 days. Like you can get a pass for a weekend pass or a week pass after about 60 days.
And you were enrolled in their electronics program, and this was an 18-month program?
About 18-month program.
All right. Now, 1970, you come back from Texas to visit your family,
Yes.
and you're in a park somewhere in Miami with some of your friends,
And things start happening.
and about 5, 6 of you, and a fight breaks out. Talk about that.
It was a fight, the fight that broke out, it was childish. And I think about it now, it was childish. Just one group trying to be better than the other group, or I almost told Moncho, and it led to a fight. And during the fight, a lot of adrenaline be flowing, a lot of adrenaline be flowing, and you just get the mob mentality. But it's in your mind, it's a fight. Never thinking that any consequences, anything bad can happen. The worst thing can happen is that you lose the fight. That's the worst thing can happen in my mind at that time. And I'm pretty sure everybody else's time. But somewhere during the heat of the fight, I grab a stick and I hit somebody with it. I hit a guy in the head with it, across the head.
Well, wait a minute. Now, when you say stick, what kind of a stick was it? Was it?
Well, maybe something like a mob handle, or not. No baseball, not a baseball bat or nothing. Just a little regular stick that's round.
And so you hit some guy in the head with this stick.
Right.
Do you remember? Was it a hard hit?
Obviously, it was, because he passed the next day.
The very next day he died.
He died.
And you were 16 years old at this
16.
time.
At the time, I was 16,
and then you had to go back to Texas. How long after he passed away did you go back to Texas?
I went right back to Texas. I didn't know about the passing or anything like that. I went back to Texas, went back with my life in job court, went back to trying to do my studies. And while I was there, about maybe a month, 6 weeks, they called me to the administration building. Ken Harvey, report to the administration building. And when I went to the administration building, the sheriff from that county said, Marcos County, he said, you're under arrest. He grabbed me my right and told me I was under arrest for homicide. I was shocked because I know I hadn't killed anyone. I mean, you definitely got.
Well, wait a minute, stop. Now, you knew you had hit this guy in the head with a broom handle or something. You knew he was hurt, but you didn't know he died yet?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know until that particular time, right? But I didn't know then. I was.
So when the police officer arrested you, you did not know that you had actually killed somebody?
Right. I had no idea.
Okay.
Until the Miami police come to get me. They extradited me to Miami.
So you were jailed in Texas.
I was jailed in Texas.
And then you were extradited to Miami.
And that's when I found the whole story.
Right.
Found the whole story.
So what happens now? You go back to Miami. What happens?
I get into a jail cell. I find out what's going on. They give me a public defender. So quite naturally, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. But as time went by, I pleaded guilty for the.
But wait a minute now. So I mean, you remembered hitting this guy,
right?
And he died. They were charging you with second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder.
But then, did you plead guilty to a lesser charge, or did they just find you guilty on a lesser charge of manslaughter?
I pleaded guilty to a lesser charge
of manslaughter.
To manslaughter.
So they dropped the second-degree murder.
Dropped the second-degree murder. And I was of the mind, get it over with, get it done with. And I was still thinking, I can do something with my life. I can go and finish electronics. I can take electronics in prison. I can do some things in prison to get on with my life. However, they did turn out like that. I went to prison. I went to a camp called Sumter.
Oh, before we get to Sumter, was the victims' families at the trial? Did you see them?
No, I didn't see them.
You never saw them? You're 16 years old. You plead guilty to manslaughter. I mean, take us back. I mean, what was that like? You had never been in any trouble before.
No, I had never been in any trouble. But let me explain this to you. When I pleaded guilty, I also had to puff myself up because I knew what I was going into. I had to I can handle this. That's one of our go-to phrases. I can handle it. I can handle it. So I had it, although I cried inside when I got back to my cell that night, I cried because I knew life was going to be different from me.
Right.
But while I was in front of the crowd and the judge, my family, whatever, I had to keep my chin up like it was going to be all right. I got this.
Gotcha.
But inside, I was still a little afraid. I was afraid. I was 16 years old.
Right. So you plead guilty to manslaughter. They sentence you to 4 years in prison.
Yes.
They send you to the Lake Butler Reception Center, and which is a clearinghouse.
Right.
And then which prison do you go to?
I went to Sumter.
And what was Sumter like at the age of 17?
Sumter was it was a juvenile camp, maybe say from the ages of 15 to about 30 years old. It was a very young camp. It was a wild camp, lots of fights, just whenever a lot of young guys be together, you can imagine all the adrenaline just be running. I got to show you that I'm better than you. You got to show me that you can whoop me. And if I don't respond the way that you think I should respond, something wrong with me. So I got to respond vicious. Like if you come in, I got to respond viciously. Because if I don't, I'm gonna be pushed over. Somebody else gonna come at me like that. So
a lot of weapons at that prison.
Not so many at that prison there. Cause we was just a bunch of young guys. We were still fighting. Now they had weapons. They had a lot of weapons, but it was mostly fights.
The expression you used when I asked you about Sumter the other day, you said there was a quote, a whole lot of wild going
A whole
on.
lot of wildness.
What does that mean?
The wild things when all the boys get together, it's gonna be fights. It's gonna be fights. As a matter of fact, I think I told you that's why I started boxing.
You learned boxing to
learned
defend
boxing.
yourself?
To defend myself, and I always been a kind of physical person. And I just took the boxing like maybe a duck took the water. I just enjoyed it, you know, and it had its benefits, its perks, because as a boxer, I got confidence, you know, and I feel like I can fight anybody. It didn't really matter anymore. So
you weren't afraid to take a punch.
Right.
How about school? Were you able to finish your school there?
Yes, I went to school there. In fact, I got a GED, my GED.
Okay.
And I was a teacher's aide there while I was there. You know, I was always inclined to like education. I was always educationally inclined. That's one of the things my mom had instilled in me as I was growing up. You know, can you go to school? You gonna graduate. You gonna go to college. And that's why I got my dream for being an electronic engineer, because I really wanted to please her, you know. But you know, way things happen, I got off my square. I fell into. Oh, we can go into that later, John.
Okay. So from this Sumter, they send you to Rayford, which is Union Correctional Institution, one of the most violent prisons in the country. And you go there and they put you in 2 months of confinement right away. Why were you in confinement?
So we had an incident at Sumter where an inmate got killed. But in order for this inmate got killed in his bed, and the only way for the guy that killed him to get to him was for the police to open the door.
The guard let him in.
Right. That was the only way, because in the mornings when you go to work, all the doors get locked. You know, that's it. The only when the doors are open back up again is when work over with, you got to come in for lunch. But this happened like about 9 o'clock that morning. And so we kind of protested, you know. Man, it's obvious what.
How many of you protested?
About half the compound, really.
And a lot of them were transferred out?
No, maybe about 100 of us was transferred.
Okay.
And when you say you protested, can you define that? I mean, how would you protest in prison?
Okay, we ain't eating. We ain't going in the building. When you call count, we standing on the yard. We sitting down. We not doing anything that authority tell us to do. All right, break it up, everybody go to the dorm. We not moving. We staying right here.
And it was because you thought that there was a guard or someone that worked at the facility that had something to do with that murder?
Right. And I mean, it was like I said, all of us that was there. The only way the guy could have got in the door was for a guard to open it.
Right. That's not uncommon, correct? I've heard the guys tell lots of stories about how a guard leaves the door unlocked and somebody gets killed. They've told me where guys have been set on fire because some guard let a door open.
Is that usually getting paid off or something? A guard would do something like that, or
probably, or it's just a guard maybe don't like this guy.
Gotcha.
You do me this favor, I do this for you.
Gotcha.
Right. So now you're transferred to Belle Glade up in Central Florida. You're there for a year. You said the crowd was older and had a negative influence on you. Talk about that.
Where in Sumter, where mostly everything was like educational in there. So when I got to Belle Glade, it was no education there. You had a lot of older guys there, and they talked about all the time was the money that they made, the women they had, the cars they had. I was like 17, 18, and so I was impressionable. So I used to hear these things, and I was like, wow, man, I'm gonna do that. And it got to the point where I stopped wanting to do what I knew was right and start doing what what I wanted to feel. Started working with my feelings instead of what I knew was right. And from there I got out and I pursued that. I pursued to try to get some money, to get some girls, to drugs, everything that they talked about. Because they made it glamorous. They made it seem really glamorous. But they never really talked about the consequences, the downside of it.
Right.
The only thing they talked about was the good side of or what I perceived at the time was the good side.
Right. If it was so glamorous, why you guys are here in prison?
Yeah. I didn't think that way.
Yeah.
My only thought was, wow, that sounds good.
Right.
So you're released from prison on the manslaughter conviction in June of 1973. You're 20 years old. Now you apply all these things, these criminal things that you learned in prison. You apply it to real life now that you're out of prison. Talk about that.
Okay, when I got out of prison, my first thought was, I'm going to try some cocaine. That's all I heard about, really, was the cocaine.
And you'd never done it before.
I had never done it before. I was never a druggie, none of that, So I'm going to try some cocaine. I tried it, and I liked it. And I had, through living like that, I ran across a couple of friends that knew people that was in prison, and they were selling drugs. They turned me on to a little thing, saying, you want to sell some dope, you can do this, do that. And then I met some more guys, robbers. And they seemed to have money all the time. No hard work, but they had money. They had cars, they had girls. They was living a life that I perceived at that time was the good life.
There's a glamorous way to live.
Okay,
So you created a robbery ring, a group of guys to start doing some armed robberies, correct?
Correct.
How does that work? Take us through this. And all the robberies were in Miami-Dade County, correct?
Right, in Miami-Dade County.
All right. Which businesses did you target?
We target stuff just like A&Gs or A&Ps.
Which is like a grocery store?
Like a grocery store. It's like maybe like a public sales.
Okay.
The big stores like that. But they had, and when you go, like during the morning time, I was like, my thing was like during the morning time. Mostly me. We go in and try to get the drop on a security guard. And during that time, most people, when they come in the store and they see a security guard, they feel really, really safe. But if they see the security guard get taken down, it kind of like put them on the shaky ground. These guys must mean business.
Hold on. Let me interrupt you for a second. So what you do, you've got a crew. There's like four of you, right?
Right.
Everybody's got a different job. And what you're saying is you go in the morning before it starts getting busy. Okay. What is each guy's, there's four of you. What is each guy's job?
One guy get the guard, get him on the ground, disarm him, take his pistol, put him on the ground. Next guy hold the cash registers. You get all the money at the cash register. They had a little boots, and like when you first come in, a little boot where the safe be at. It's just, I guess it would be customer service area now, but that's where the money boots, yeah. So you would, one man go and take care of that, and one man with a driver.
There's your four guys.
I got 4 guys.
And what type of stores was it? Just general department stores? What kind of
like
big
grocery
stores and stuff like that?
Like grocery stores, or even Eagle Army, Navy.
Okay.
We'll get there. That was the one that brought you down. And Andy worked at an Army Navy store.
I did.
He was probably there that day.
You never know.
So how much time? You're in and out. How long? You go in. You get a drop on the guard. How long does the whole robbery take?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Wow.
2 minutes tops.
And how much money you normally get every robbery?
Well, I would say we average about anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. And you got to remember, that was a lot of money in those days.
Yeah,
sure. 1970.
Yeah, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 20 years old. Now you get caught. You rob the Army Navy store.
Eagle Army Navy.
Talk about, actually the robbery seemed to go okay. It was what happened after the robbery. Talk about this.
after the robbery, I guess one of the guys, I'm thinking that nobody really knowing what I'm doing. Don't nobody know what I do. You know, they just know I just have a lot of money. But some guys got caught doing something. I don't know what it, I never did find that story out. They could have been stealing a car or whatever, but whatever they got caught for, they knew somebody do robberies.
You think one of the guys that did the robberies with you told somebody?
Probably, may have, probably.
Okay, go ahead.
And you know, but I was kind of more or less the leader of the group because I had been to prison, and out of prison I was young, so the guys looked at me for direction in that.
You'd been around,
right? Well, I thought I had been around. I ain't been nowhere.
right.
And
so somebody told somebody that you were the leader of this crew doing armed robberies. So somebody told the police that you were involved in this.
Right.
So what happened? They show up at your house?
They come arrest me, put me in a lineup, and somebody picked me out. But even then, I denied it. It wasn't me. I kept denying it.
You guys didn't wear masks?
No, they didn't do no masks or cameras.
There was no cameras?
Yeah, so you know, it was like, this was like 1974. So,
but you're the only guy that gets picked out. There was 4 of you, but you're the only guy that goes on trial.
I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't give anybody up. I had got really, really indoctrinated my first time in prison. When I went to the camp where the older guys were, I really got drilled. You don't tell nobody. You carry your own water. Whatever happened, if it happened to you, you just got to take it.
And that's a common theme in prison with prisoners, right?
Right.
You never snitch on anybody.
Never.
Yeah, but here's a question. Okay, somebody told the authorities that you were the guy that hit that guy in the head with a stick.
Right.
Somebody told him that you did it.
Right.
And somebody told the police that you were doing these and
Right.
probably got a lesser sentence. So I guess the question I have is, there were 3 other guys involved in this, and you could have lessened your sentence if you had just told them, but you didn't.
That was the way life was.
Okay.
That's the way it was. You know, you, like I said, you carry your own water. You know, if you make your own bed, you lay in it. Gotcha. So I'm the one that got caught, so I just have to ride it out.
I understand.
Do you view that, I wonder, because this is a theme that we've heard pretty often from people, right? Yeah. That have been here on our show being interviewed. Do you view it as a mistake now, years later?
Right now, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Because you got a life sentence out of it.
I got a life sentence out of that. You know, but we'll get to that. But I feel like right now, all of that helped shape the person I am today.
Right.
You know, so
September 4th of 1974, you get a life sentence. What did a life sentence mean in 1974? Because after 95, it meant 25 years mandatory, and then you could be considered. What was the life in 74?
Life in 74 meant you could get a parole in 5 years, 7 years, 6 years, whatever. You know, you want 12 years. If a guy did 12 years on a life sentence at that time, he was really messing up. You know, if he did 15 years, he was really messing up.
Wow.
So, you know, you was parolable. So the life sentence meant I was going to be in prison 7 years. That's why I figured I'd be in prison 7 years.
Well, for some reason, the parole laws changed in 1981. No, they changed in 79, and you got a parole date of 1981.
Mm-hmm.
But you escaped in 1980.
Right.
Why did you do that?
I was at a work release center. And at the work release center, you had to give them your money. You know, you give them your money. But I was still with my stinking thinking. You know, I was still trying to be slick. You know, and I would keep my money or give them some of the money. I would. turf, we call it turf. We called it turfing is sneak out at night, hang out and come back in the morning. You know, I was doing that, drinking me a little, not much drinking, but I would hit a wine or hit a liquor. And so one day I came in from work, I was just getting problems. I was a problem child. I got caught gambling, everything. So one day I came back in to sign up, to sign in. You know, you got to sign out in the morning, sign back in. And when I signed in, when I was getting ready to sign in, I seen Hold by my name. H-O, you know, the Hold.
H-O-L-D.
H-O-L-D, Hold in parentheses. And normally when you see that, that means the next day you finna get on the bus, go back to prison. So yeah, so
Why would they have sent you back to prison? Was there something you did?
Stuff, you know, I was violating. I wasn't right with them. I wasn't paying them the money. You got to pay them the money every week. I got caught 2 or 3 times gambling.
Gotcha.
You know, I got, you know, stuff like that.
So if I asked you how you escaped, you would say, I didn't really escape. I just turned around and walked away from the work release center.
I just walked away because I just left.
Right.
I just left.
So now it's February of 1981. You're 27 years old. And so actually you're 4 months on the lam. You've absconded.
Yeah, absconded. That's what it was.
You've absconded.
Exactly.
And you're just out there and you're committing burglaries.
Right.
And you get caught. I was going to say, son, you need a new career choice because you're getting caught at everything.
But that's a good thing, though.
Yeah.
To me, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're doing a burglary at a European auto parts store. Tell us what happened.
We was in a place, we had got into the place, but little did we know the guys that owned the company next door, the building next door, they owned a little shop there. So they heard the noise, called the cops. When the cops come, we ran. It was 3 of us. We ran. 2 of us got caught. One of the guys that got caught that night, he got read out. You know, it was a bond because of burglary. It was like a burglary, but I couldn't go anywhere. I had escaped. I had a warrant for my escape.
Right. So what you said, two of you get caught. There's 3 of you.
3 of us.
One guy takes off. They don't find him. The other guy gets caught. He actually goes to trial, beats the rap.
He beats the rap. Later on, he beats it.
But with you, there was no rap to beat. They just caught an escapee.
Right. So I just took what I could get. Give me 30 days for the escape. Give me 18 months for the burglary and run everything concurrent with the life sentence. That means like I ain't got no day. I ain't got no time.
Right.
Because I know I'm going back to prison.
You understand that?
Yeah. What I wonder is when you left that work release program and absconded for 4 months, did you think you weren't going to get out? Because I'm trying to understand. I mean, you had a parole date of 1981.
Oh, that
right around the corner.
Yeah.
But when that hold on you is going back to prison, I wouldn't have that 81 date no more. Now it probably went to 83. It went, you know, it probably went to 83. But at that point in my life, I wasn't thinking ahead like that.
Right.
It was everything was instant gratification for me. You know, it felt good. That's what I wanted. You know, I didn't think about where I'm gonna get my meals at 3 days from now.
Right.
I want to eat right now. I'm gonna worry about this meal now.
Right.
So this is good. No matter how I get it, hook or crook, it don't matter. It feels good, and that's what I want.
Right. Looking back on it now, you probably didn't think that was the best decision you ever made. No. All right. So we fast forward. Now it's May of 1981. They've caught you, and they send you back to Rayford, and still a violent place, and you're back at Rayford.
Yes.
But you are finally paroled at age 32, 5 years later.
Right. 5 years later, I get paroled. I went to a cooking and baking school. I had finally got some skills that I was really good at.
Mm-hmm.
I started off wanting to be like electronics, and I went with that for a while. But when I look back at the course of my life, everything I started doing good and I let something else creep in my life and cloud that vision. So well, when I went with the cooking and baking, I took that all away. I would never let nobody cry out my vision. I just took with that, just ran with that.
So
And
2 years later, this is when your life changes again. And this story, I think our listeners will be amazed by this story of how parole operates, because there's only 4,000 or 5,000 people in the state of Florida still subjected to parole, correct?
Correct.
So
that many, I don't know.
So you're paroled in 1986. 1988, you accidentally write a bad check. Talk about this.
I wrote a check. Well, at the time, I get my paycheck on Mondays. So during like Thursday or Friday, I would write a check because I know I'm gonna cover it that Monday when I get paid. Some kind of way, whatever, it bounced. The check bounced. I didn't get the regular 3-4 days I normally get.
Right.
Check bounce. I still put the money in my bank account like I always do.
On Monday.
Right. So I ain't never think nothing about it till the police came and arrested me for a bounce check. So I go to jail. I get in jail, and once we're in jail under parole, this you can't bond out. You can't bond out. You have to wait till the parole people come.
Well, let's excuse me for interrupting. Let's back up a second so that people can understand. So you write a bad check. Whoever you wrote it to, was it a business?
It was a business.
Okay, so they call the police. They file a criminal complaint.
Yes, I filed a criminal complaint.
All right, and so the parole commission revokes your parole. There's no trial, so there's no lawyers involved.
They just revoked my parole.
So they revoke your parole for a bounce check. And how many years did you get for that?
Well, they revoked my parole. I ended up doing 28 more years.
28
more years?
Yes,
for a bounce check.
28 more years. After the judge had after we explained to the judge what had happened, he threw it out. Just made a civil complaint. So McKinney gets paid people back the money. And I was like, I already paid them. I paid them that money like I normally do. I put the money in the bank. So
this might be a stupid question. How big of a check was that?
It was no more, maybe about $60 or $100. It couldn't have been more than $100.
But you see, it didn't matter that the judge dismissed it. It was a parole violation according to the parole commission, and they revoked his parole.
Gotcha.
And they sent him back to prison. We had another guy in our program that got 28 years because he was riding around in a car while on parole, and somebody in the car had an open container of beer. Not him, but somebody else. And they were pulled over, and he was violated and did another 28 years because of an open can of beer in a car. Think about that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Did that make you bitter?
No. Starting off, I was kind of like angry, but I keep feeling like I was gonna get out. I was gonna get out. This, that. I'm gonna get out. But as the years went by and I seen I wasn't getting out, it didn't turn me bitter. It actually probably the best thing happened to me in my whole entire life because it helped create the person I am now. And as my years, I think I told you, I'm 66. I'll be 67 next month. I really don't have the time to be angry and bitter. I'm gonna lose out on my life. So I love my life now, man. I really enjoy my life. I'm married. I scuba dive. I mentor kids. I'm a greeter in the church. And things like that, I never could have did if I'd have let the bitterness eat me up.
What a great attitude that is. I mean, what a great attitude.
Kenneth and I were speaking the other day, and he told me that was the best thing that ever happened in his life, and he explained it just the way he did now. But you also said the lessons I learned in prison are lessons I should have learned before prison.
Right.
Talk about that.
I learned the lessons I learned in prison this last time. I'm gonna tell you a story that happened to me maybe about 15 years before I got out of prison. I had made a decision that I need to change my life. The way this keep going, I can't keep doing this. I got to change my life. And I was in the process of changing my life. But then all my friends that knew me over the years, they were, boy, Kenny, you laying down, boy, you done let them whip you to death. You know, they were ridiculing me, you know. And I was thin-skinned. I went along like that for about 3-4 months. But before it got to me so bad, I was like, I went back to the way I was, you know. And I let what other people think change my mind, control me. I would stop living for myself. I stopped living for what other people thought of me.
And peer pressure again.
Yeah, and yeah, that's it, you know. And not living the way my parents raised me to be. You know, I was. Then about 5 years passed after then, I tried again. I definitely got to get out of prison. I can't live like this. And I really changed my life. That's why I actually changed my life totally. And I wasn't thin-skinned no more. Guys was talking to me all this, you ridiculing me. That's all right. I know where I'm going now. I know where I'm going.
Well, the other day when we spoke, I said the same thing as Andy. Andy said, do you have any bitterness? And I said, you must be angry about 28 years for a bounce check. And you said, there's too much life to live to get bogged down with anger.
My life is full of sunshine, man. I have a great life. A great life. Okay, I would tell you, my best day in prison can't compare to the worst day I have right here. You know?
Right.
So the worst day I have out here been better than any day I ever had in prison.
So you went back for 28 years. How did you survive 28 years in prison and not get killed? You were a boxer. That must have helped.
Yeah, it helped a lot. You know, I mean, I have to say, you know, I speak spiritual. You know, I believe in God. God was with me. I couldn't have did it on my own. You know, I'm not that ferocious. You know, so I know I was a higher power.
Right.
And to me, that was God. You know, and when I decided to like just change my life and just give it up, that's what I did. I gave my life to God.
And everything else just sort of fell into place at that point?
At that point, everything fell into place. Yeah, at that point.
I asked you if you were in a lot of fights in prison, and you said, yeah, you were in a fair amount of fights. And I asked, was it always just fists or was it weapons? And you said it really didn't matter. Explain that.
If I can stop a hand, I can stop a knife, you know, because the hand holds the knife. If I can stop you from punching me, I can stop you from stabbing me.
And you said that usually when somebody gets killed, it's because they made a mistake. What was the mistake?
They turn it back and run. Turn it back and run.
You got to stand up and fight.
Yeah, you got to stand. You know, I mean, when you're fighting for your life, you get strength from somewhere you might not even know. You know what I'm saying? But it's the survival. It's in a human being. You can't even hold your breath to make yourself die. You can't hold your breath. The human nature going to take over. And if you stand there and put up a fight, a lot of times you're going to come out all right. You know.
So let's talk about your transition, because the parole commission requested that you be transferred from Sumter to Everglades Correctional Institution, where I met you back in 2014. Talk about that.
That's when I knew I was well on my way. And I wanted to become a sponge then at that point in my life. I wanted to become a sponge. I wanted to make sure I can get all of my tools in order. And some things that I learned with the help of Dr. Sharon, she's a great lady. She asked me to be on a serving committee. And I didn't want to be on serving committee, serving no more convicts and, you know, and keep a smile on my face. How you doing? I didn't want to do all that, you know, but she made me do it anyway. And after I started doing it, I found out I had a knack for that. You know, I mean, it was something that it just came naturally to me. And I learned then being a servant is all right. You know? So it helps me now, like when I feed the homeless or when I say mentor the kids, I always remember that I'm just a servant. You know,
But when you got transferred to Everglades, that was probably a good day for you in prison.
It was a good day. It was. Now, everybody that don't go to Everglades don't make it out.
Right.
You know, but the vast majority do. Okay? So you still got work to do. They don't just automatically say, "Well, I'm finna get out." You still got work to do.
And you got out in 2 years,
years,
which is the way it's supposed to work. Sometimes we have guys who don't get out in 2 years because maybe the parole commission changed and a new person comes in and looks at a file and says, I wouldn't have put that person in the program. And they put them off for 7 years. But not you. You got out in 2 years.
Right.
Over the 28 years, how many times did you come up for parole?
14 or 15 times.
And why did they never let you out?
Past record.
Past records.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the escape when you escaped for 4 months, that was the worst thing that you could have put in your record?
I don't know, because that parole, they gave me a parole again. Other than so.
You have any DRs in your record?
Surprisingly few. I have maybe over 40 years, I may have 15 DRs.
Delinquency reports.
Right. Yeah. I only have maybe 15 of them. You know, I don't have a whole lot.
But you know, the transition does present some challenges, and you actually made it through a challenge that you had. Somebody who was very close to you passed away. You were paroled in 2016. Somebody very close to you passed away in 2017.
Right.
And because of that, because you're still on parole, you're subjected to random urinalysis. People don't realize that when you're on parole, you can't drink, you can't do drugs, you can't do that stuff. And if you test positive, they can recidivate you and put you right back.
Right.
And you tested positive for alcohol and marijuana.
Yes.
Talk about that.
When I got in 2016, I met a girl, Katie Green, and she was great for me at that time. She was like the apple of my eye. And about a year later, she came down with cancer. She had breast cancer before, but this time it came back. And when it came back, it kind of ravaged her, took her like in no time. But my parole officer seen me. She used to come by the house and she used to see me taking care of Katie. And she was always like, Kenny, you're a good guy, you know, cause you really not obligated to be here with her like that. You know, you're not married to her or anything, but you do her good taking care. You know, she was impressed with the way I took care of Katie. You know, I took care of her to the end. In fact, I held her as she transitioned to death. You know, I held her. So I went to the parole one day and they gave me a urine analysis, and I tested positive. But she told me, she said, Kenny, this might be an interaction from God. So because you too good of a guy to be back in prison for this, you know. She said, I'm gonna see if I can help you. That was like on a Tuesday. That Friday, she told me I was come down to Broward County to go to a drug program.
Right.
And that was 3 years ago.
And Dr. Sheeran was helpful in that as well, correct?
Dr. Sheeran and John Edens, they helped me get to that place. And,
wow, that's fantastic.
Well, and that was truly what they should have done under the circumstances.
And
but unusual, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's not something
especially for me.
Right.
Fair, you know, because I have never, well, I always say this, I had never got a break in my life, you know, but I got one then.
Yeah, you got very fortunate to have the right parole officer, because 20 others could have just violated you and you'd be back at Everglades or some other place
for a long, long time.
Yeah, she was like, you know, you too good person. She knew, she happened to just see the person I was instead of what the paper said I was. You know, she.
Are you still on parole today?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. How often do they test you for?
I just
randomly?
tested. Yeah, randomly. I just tested last Monday. So, but you call me in the middle of the night if you want. You know,
Right.
I'm clean and sober.
You know, people don't understand that when you're on parole, you can't drink.
I mean, you can't even drink a beer.
No.
Yeah, you can't.
Explain that, because people think, well, why can't you drink? Explain.
Well, they just alcohol. Period. Alcohol is drugs, yeah, and they feel like maybe alcohol or be a gateway, open up other doors for you,
And some people committed the crimes
Right,
under the influence of
right.
alcohol and drugs as well. So people don't realize when you get paroled, it's a contract with you and the parole commission,
Yes,
and
it
you
is.
have to live up to their agreement or they revoke it. So now
And then at that point, I imagine you're going to agree to anything. You want out of prison, right?
Correct. Just like he said, a good, a bad day on the outside is always better than a good day on the inside.
Right.
But as God works in mysterious ways, and I know church is a big part of your life, you met somebody very special who became the love of your life, and I believe you got married last year.
Yes, we
You want
did.
to talk about that?
I was working at this sober house, a recovery house, and I was the maintenance man there, and the guys asked some we needed some plumbing material, and he told me, gave me a credit card and told me to go get some stems. So, but as I was getting ready to go out the door to get him a car, he said, "Hey, but you probably need to go to Roy Davis to get it," and that's like 30 minutes away, and Home Depot right around the corner. So my mind, I was going to Home Depot.
Of course.
So he told me, I was like, man, I go to Home Depot and get it. He said, nah, man, just go to the plumbing supply store and get it. He said, we got an account there anyway, you know. So I get him a car. I'm mad, really. I'm angry. I don't want to be driving all the way up here. Then I got to come back and put this stuff in. So
Right.
So when I walk into the store, I meet my wife. Little did I know this. It's gonna be my wife.
Oh my gosh.
What was she was working there?
Yeah, she working there. She working retail. So I walked in and I just seen her and I don't know what came over me. That was it. People were behind me and laughed. You can go ahead. I was gonna make sure I got the way she was. You know, hey, you go ahead.
Love at first sight.
Love it first.
You laid the charm on her, and that was it.
That was it.
So you ask her for a date right then?
Right then, you know, I asked for.
How long did you date before you got married?
About a year.
Oh, nice.
I asked her for a phone number.
All right,
She
good.
gave me a phone number.
And now as you said, life is too short. You're living life. You're not angry. You're who would ever thought when you did 28 years in prison, you'd be scuba diving now. You're PADI certified?
PADI certified. PADI certified.
All right. Well, listen.
And when you know, so I rarely tell people this, but I guess I can tell you.
Mhm.
I can't swim.
That's
I
pretty.
can't swim, man. He's the guy that certified me. He was like, Kenny, I never had nobody that could scuba dive that couldn't swim.
That's funny.
But I trusted the process. When I got in, it's just like everything else in my life now, part of my life now. I trust the process instead of me trying to stir the pot myself.
Interesting.
So,
Kenneth, I met you at Everglades Correctional Institution at the Voices of Time Gavel Club. I knew you were a good man. And today you're feeding the homeless. What else are you doing now that you're out? Because Dr. Sheeran always says that you got to give back.
That's what I do. I mentor the kids in my church. That's one of the things I really like doing. I mentor the kids. I help them with their homework. And I kind of put a male figure in their lives, you know, because some of them don't have that. So I ask them about their work, their school work, how they acting at the house, you know. And I try to give them little tidbits, you know. Always look out for your mom and your sister, any girls in your family. Don't fight girls.
Right.
Try to, you know, the things that little boys do, you know, from 12 years old on down, 10, 11.
Right.
Well, you could impart a lot of wisdom with all the hard
Yeah.
knocks you've experienced.
Well, I try to, I definitely try to, and I try to keep the right attitude.
Yeah.
I try to keep you can overcome everything. There's nothing in life that you can't overcome.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. And you're also very active at church. You're a greeter at your church.
Rita,
And we hope you can one day come back and visit us here again and be a guest on the show again, I hope.
yes, definitely, most definitely.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. You're a good man and a great guest. Andy, any comments for the end of the show?
I just think it's inspirational to me that, to meet Kenneth and to see how he's transformed his life and married, happy. I mean, he's practically glowing over here, for God's sake. But it's great to meet you and to see that you've got a great life now here in society, being productive and giving back, as you say, which the men in the program are, asked to do. I think it's great.
And people can watch our shows where?
Yeah, watch our shows, True Crime Network, on YouTube, available. True Crime Miami, social media. Just search True Crime Miami to see any of these shows. And of course, our podcasts on Apple, Twitter, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere where you can get podcasts, Men Going Home.
Well said. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Men Going Home. And please join us next week for another great show with our guest, Troy Martin from Miami-Dade, who was convicted of first-degree murder at the age of 19 and survived 32 years in prison. Thank you again, and thank you so much for watching, and see you all next week.